I mean, how about this, just to begin? Is there anything you'd like to say? Because I know you know many of the people here. Anything you'd like to say just to kind of have people welcome to this part of the evening?
Other than thank you, like a huge thank you for being here today and staying this long, but also just being a part of my life, because you've all impacted me and my life and my work in one way or another. And this is like a collaborative effort. There's no way I could have done any of this on my own. So I'm just very grateful to have you in my life, but also to finally be able to share this with you in like a public venue, because this is the first time I show my work in LA, and it's really moving, and it's like a homecoming of sorts, and I know like a lot of my family have never seen this work, so it's just really great to kind of give it back to them, and especially when they've been involved in many ways.
Yeah, so thank you everyone who's here, and thank you those of you who you might have been in some of the images, and then of course a big part of Francis's life. And I just want to say this is what I'm really excited about for film curating and programming in the city, is to be able to bring a program like yours today. There's another filmmaker here, Nora Sweeney, who last year also had many of her films all together in one night, like you. And I think it's a very special event, in addition to everything you said, that it's a homecoming, but a very special event because it's not normal to see all of them, or many of them together. I know it's not all your work, but it's a good amount, and from those years. And I see all sorts of patterns, but they're textures, and they're done differently, and they're done poetically in a different angle, but a similar theme, or a different theme, but a similar style. And I thought that was very beautiful to see that. So maybe just to begin, any reactions to seeing kind of all of them together, or this set of films together? Anything you want to say about that?
Yeah, there's definitely overlaps visually, sonically, conceptually. There's these different ways in which they're interconnected, and it really didn't click to me until I saw them all together and saw things repeated, some that are intentional, but some that are just, I guess they're just lingering in my head and come out, and not in a bad way either. Like I think I have this way of thinking that I feel like sometimes my body is ahead of my brain, and there's a lag between them, and it just takes some time to catch up. But I know to trust my body, my intuition, and then my brain will catch up to it eventually. So I think that's the way that I work. And I think you see that especially in the Navigating the Archives film, where there is this disjointed, fragmented, dissonant approach to everything coming together and clashing and harmonizing and not harmonizing, and it's messy, it's chaotic, but at the same time, it's showing how there's also beauty in complexity, which I think is super important to make note of. And I'm sorry if I'm like, you'll have to stop me, or otherwise I'll keep rambling.
I think it's perfect. Just hearing you right now reminds me a program I did at the end of this last year was with Trinity Mingha, who I've been following for many years, and part of what had me think about her films was the first thing I read from her, and it was just a chapter in a bigger book, but it was about self and society, and that's where I went when I was with your archivings, navigating the archive within. That it's the self, but it's also much more than the self. You're covering so much of society at the same time, and so it was almost like a part of the heartbeat. And then for me also, with the film right before that, Becoming Home, for me it was, because we can talk about them chronologically, but I think going to navigating the archives within and becoming home for me were almost like the heartbeat of all of it. And then of course they tell a story, because you're like the title that you created, there are different formations of your life in many different ways. So anything that you kind of see about, the navigating the archives within and becoming home as almost like a centerpiece to these films?
Yes, and I hadn't thought of it that way. Wow. For sure, I think the becoming home was the first section of it. Those were like analog photographs that I had done, very early in like community college, and then later on in my first few years at Otis and first semester. And it's interesting how a lot of the photo work ends up being in the videos, because there's no other way to show them. So might as well make videos that go on YouTube and people can watch them that way. But I think that was the early kind of like stepping stone to like learning how to use these different materials as a way to storytell. And I think with the other film, the navigating piece, that was also during school, and it started with a research paper that was done back then, and it wasn't until like 2019, 2020, when, especially with like the social political climate, it made sense to kind of revisit that and use that as a point of departure, and to integrate it somehow. Oftentimes we write in school, and it kind of gets forgotten and collecting dust somewhere. And that particular paper was like a capstone that I worked very closely with my mentor, Dr. Jean Willett. And that paper, it was the first instance in which I felt writing worked for me as a tool. Like, I feel like working with her, I was able to find my voice. Prior to that, I hated writing. I hated doing research papers. I was an average writer. But that paper in particular made me, because I found something of interest, right? Something that was not just challenging, but also like I was learning so much that was related to me and my own experience and the experience of those around me, that made it essential to actually use writing as a mode, right? As a way of expressing. That, at that time had no idea, no like vision of how I would ever use it, but fast forward to 2020, and suddenly it made sense to come back to that and to repurpose it and to incorporate parts of it into that work. So there's definitely like these foundations that were done like earlier on that kind of resurface and find new ways of living, and yeah, many afterlives, I guess, is a good way to put it. Yeah.
And then I'll open it up right now, just a couple more. One was the beginning and the end has a similar formation there, right? And but they're also from very different times. The 2013, 2025, our year, and they kind of bookend and create a story in and of itself. The way the films are laid out that start and end that way. And then after that, after Mountain, it kind of jumps to 2016, and then from there it's very consecutive. And so yeah, anything. And then also there's another little jump at the end to the new film we just saw, right? And but most of it is in that kind of middle area, 2016, 2021, 22. And so anything you'd like to just say about that kind of way we start and end, and what you see about your work? Because it's very poetic, very personal, and I think very political at the same time. And in those in particular, beginning and ending, I think it just symbolizes the whole program.
Yeah, it's interesting that you use those three words: poetic, political, personal. And I'm remembering my mentor, Carol Carumpus, who passed away not too long ago, but those were the words when we would have conversations that really resonated with, really like stuck to me from our conversations. And it's just really, I don't know, I feel like she's with me here today, especially hearing you say those exact same words in the same way. So Carol, wherever you are, I miss you and I love you so much. But I think the gaps are significant in that, well, maybe it's not visible, but the gaps, even though it may seem like nothing's happening, there's writing, there's thinking involved, photographing. Like a lot of the stuff doesn't happen in, like, let's say 2025, right? Like that last film was not completely done in 25. That really started in 2020, and it's not until like I accumulate enough material. And again, following my intuition, because I have no idea how that material is going to be used. It's not until suddenly something just clicks and it makes sense to suddenly use it and pair it with something or work with someone that's gonna help me. For example, my brother, it made sense to bring him into that piece, as you've noticed, and have him not just write the music, but like improvise and bring in other musicians. So it's become very collaborative. I think that's what makes the work not only stronger, but it makes the work, it takes longer to produce it because I'm working more and more with more and more people, as opposed to working individually. And I think that's something that's changed in my work. You might notice, or well, I would hope that you would notice it. But I think that opening up the process to where it's like I'm co-creating with other friends and family members, it's really changed and redefined my work and the way that I work. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and as soon as you said your brother, I started paying attention to the sound.
Mm-hmm.
And Jorge, if you're up there, there's some feedback. Can you turn it down just a little bit, the microphone levels? And but yeah, you mentioned your brother, and I started to think of sound and audio more. And but so he comes up in a couple different ones in navigating the archives within. He's in the center, and at the end we kind of realize there's been an orchestration, and you and him are in the center of it. And then in the other films, you see him in the credits too. And your brother's here, came from Houston. If there's anything you want to say to acknowledge him and your collaboration.
Yeah, thank you for first and foremost, and yeah, yeah, it's my partner in crime, and I would say that you mean that particular piece is actually like the two of us. We both, it's our first like actual collaborative work where it's we're already working on like 2 more chapters that are gonna be different in the sense that it's gonna be more performative, and like we actually wanna jam out and actually dance, so it's gonna be more experiential and definitely like, yeah, it's just gonna be very different from that particular piece where we're trying to think of ways to like engage audience and have them be less passive, and nothing wrong with that, but we just want to find a way in which they can actually be more engaged physically in the work itself, in co-creating the work, right? Because not only would you be an audience member, but you're also a participant in being at the performance at that specific time. And I'm really interested in that at the moment, and how to, in performance, but also in co-creating and with like a specific community or a specific group of people. But that has to be also like a process that is developed over time. And definitely there's a level of like trust that has to be achieved, and because trust is a necessary part of the improvisation. Like people think improvisation is just something you actually have to like equally listen as you like contribute, right? And you're also like in dialogue with everyone around you, and that's a very important part of that particular work, and in the future chapters that I really want to kind of explore more.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
And I think Anthony already does that. He's been doing that. He's a performer. Yeah. So I don't know if you want to say, Anthony, anything or add. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure what I would add. You've already said pretty much everything, except maybe I would say that the improvisational aspect of it is also part of something where the last question of the navigating the archives is in is like, how do we move forward? How do we envision future ways of creating that are outside of the stereotypes that exist? And for me, it's like improvisation is the way forward because we're drawing from within. Our body is an archive, our history as archive, as material for new futures that create alternative models to the ones that we're currently living in. So I think for me, improvisation is like the unique aspect of the more latter pieces because it creates that opportunity to create a new future. Yeah.
Thank you, Anthony. So just off of Anthony's comment, and this is my last one, I think many of the works we just saw, along the lines of what Anthony is saying, especially navigating the archives within in a very direct way, but all of them in a more subtle way, maybe you're speaking very directly in navigating the archives within, but in other ones you're speaking through color, you're speaking through texture, you're speaking through family, you're speaking through culture, you're speaking through dance, through food, and it's a lot of preserving, as you were saying, many different passed down valuable wisdom, experience, traits, and that often are unrecognized, marginalized, not valued by kind of more power keepers in society, and at the same time, there's this breaking of vicious circles, breaking of repetitive vicious cycles of oppression, and like your brother is saying, and future making, and there's both happening at the same time. One aimed at the past, another aimed at the future, and kind of grounded in the present. And I thought that was very palpable in very different ways in different films. So anything you want to say just about that kind of breaking of vicious circles and patterns, and also at the same time preserving generational wisdom and culture?
Yeah, that's a good observation. I think there's definitely, even just having seen it all today, like there's definitely instances where like I recognize a specific, like I'm thinking rhythm and pleasure in particular, like that's a great example because you're seeing people perform tasks that definitely not in the US, you don't see anyone doing that anymore, but in other parts of the world there is this but there, like craft is very much still present, right? And there's this, it's coming from this knowledge or practice that's been passed down from generation to generation. Like there is this way of living in which when something breaks, for example, like you fix it. You don't just go throw it away and go buy a new one. It's like a whole different way of living. And so I think that's like a great example of how, a great example of that, like learning from things that have been passed down and different forms of wisdom. But I'm also thinking like the food, right? Like how many of us know how to, grow our own food, and we don't. Why? Because, it's not profitable. And so it's really important, especially like having seen my mom and the way that she collects seeds, like it's inherent to like want to collect those seeds and then to want to plant them and to grow them potentially for food. But at the same time, there's an impossibility to that living in the US when you don't own your own land or you live in an apartment and whatever. And so like these are these practices and ancestral knowledge that have been passed down that even if there is a cut from it because of displacement or dislocation or migration, like there's still a pull from our own bodies to like want to learn these things, or like a lingering or a sense of belonging, a sense of like rootedness, that there's this desire, right? There's this desire of all of these things. And And I think that for me is like a great example that like illustrate. And you see the plants again, like well, you didn't see it in this version, but at the end in the navigating the archives within, the plants for the performance, like that whole set, all of those are vegetables and fruits, and those were actual plants that my mom grew from collecting seeds from the food that we ate over several months. And so I think it's important to like reconnect and reconnect to these ways of thinking of the earth differently, in which we are one with the earth rather than this model of extraction and conquering the earth, and a lot of what like Manifest Destiny is about, and colonialism and all of that. And so we have to break the cycle, and like the only way forward is to do these small practices of maybe like learning how to plant a seed and grow something out of it. Like that's just one small way, but there's more, right? And it's a matter of finding them and reconnecting to them. Yeah, and I think also like other practices, cultural practices, like for example in Rhythm and Pleasure, I don't know if you caught it, but there's a scene where the older person is showing the younger person how to play the drum, and it's kind of sad that you can see in their like body language that they didn't feel like they were getting it, but there's this moment of teaching that happens in that instance. Like, yes, it's a party, yes, it's fun, but it's also a moment or like a space in which the transmission of knowledge is taking place, right, in these ways that aren't necessarily valued or even recognized, right? And it's done through music, through a language that was close to being endangered of extinction, through dancing, right? And dancing, there's all kinds of connections between, well, this is also part of what I'm researching for the next project too, is like how to connect these particular forms of dancing and their relationship to agriculture, right? Because it's about digging into the earth, right? As opposed to ballet, where it's like lifting off the ground and lightness. So I'm really interested in all of these things and finding ways to kind of direct people to reconsider their relationship, not just to land, but also relationship to community, relationship to family, whether it's chosen or not. And
And what you just said right now about his body language is teaching someone, the younger drummer, like all these informal, unrecognized forms of pedagogy. That is the stuff of the teachings of generational knowledge.
Absolutely.
Like it's happening all the time in those ways that we won't recognize. Well, should we open it up?
Yeah, yes, please, if anyone has any question. I think someone's back there.
Questions for Francis? Oh, I'll go up there.
First of all, I just want to say that you're incredibly well-spoken, and I think you're a beautifully personal artist, and every image and soundbite was poetic and striking. But I'm a street photographer, and I just had a question. How did you approach all those people in the Becoming film? Like, how did you go up and ask them? Did you ask them, like, did you tell them what you were doing, what it was for, and all that? I just wanted to know your approach.
Just to be clear, the film where people are performing different tasks of labor, and then, yeah, that, okay, so with that film, the majority of them are family members and neighbors across Honduras, El Salvador, and Nicaragua, and so I mean, that it didn't say there, but that film was actually started in 2014, and then I didn't know what I was doing with it, and then in 2019 I finally got commissioned to do something through Art Pace, which is a residency in San Antonio, and so I took that opportunity to go back and finish that film, and because I had that prior trip in 2014, I had already established relationships, I had maintained contact, and so 2014 was really more getting to meet people and in my own family, because even in my own family I hadn't met everyone, and a lot of them I met as a child, so it had been many years, so it's just a matter of like reconnecting and getting to meet them, and a lot of conversation, asking them what what they do, and then also them interrogating me, like, who are you? What do you do? And like really trying to explain what art is and what I do for a living, or what all this is going to be used for, what's the purpose of it, like why am I interested in that, why would other people be interested in that? So they have a lot of questions, so it was like very conversational, and it took a lot of time to build those relationships and that level of trust. And then when I came back in 2019, I just reacquainted with them and kind of picked up, but definitely took a long time to pull out the camera. The first time around, I mean, most of that footage I didn't use. Number one, because the quality was bad, because I had really, economic tools, just using like a point and shoot. And the second time around, I came with a budget from ArtPace, so I was able to, and a team. I took my mom, my grandma, my dad, my brother, so everybody like helped, and everybody had a different skill set. And then also the community was excited about the project, and they wanted to become involved, and they all found ways to like contribute. So that's how that project came about. And fortunately, in 2021, I got another small grant where I was able to bring that work back and actually share it with the community in El Salvador. The grant was for El Salvador, so I was only able to take it there. But on the way there, I have to pass through Honduras, so I like snuck one in there, and in the southern part of Honduras, so I also showed it there. And these were informal screenings, just tying a bed sheet with 2 poles on the ends, and I brought like a little projector, I brought a little speaker, and that was the movie theater, outdoor movie screening. And it was nice to be able to share that work with everyone involved. A lot of them had never seen a lot of the stuff that you saw in there, so it was like they were also learning about other cultures. Like they realized like being Latino or being like X, Y, or Z nationality is not a monolith. Like people in the South realize that in the northern part, people do things differently and eat different foods and dance and sing differently. So it was really exciting to see those nuances kind of like internalize and experience. And there was a sense of pride in also seeing their contributions in the work. For example, the little girl, the second time, she was much older, and she was actually like happy to be a part of it, and like she laughed about her reaction in being camera shy, right? So it was really lovely to see the way things evolved and progressed. And at the same time, there was also people that I filmed the first time that were no longer there, unfortunately. They either passed or migrated elsewhere, or actually made their way to the US. So it was really interesting to see how things evolved there. Like, 2014 to 2019 is a long time. Life happens, right? And situations progress and, actually got worse, right? And, 2025 now, like it's a whole different landscape, right? It's a whole different socio-economic situation. So it's really interesting to see that progression or that evolution. I hope I answered your question. Yeah, I just keep rambling. So.
Can you pass this behind you, Diego?
Hi, I have another question for Francis. I guess I'm like interested in how the sound design and editing process and like improvisation are tied together, because sometimes it feels like it's like so perfectly, like the dancing and then the cooking after have very similar rhythmic like thing, and I'm just curious like what the order or like how you set it up. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you felt that way, because this is actually like a not shortened, but that particular work is a 8-channel installation, and so to show it here, I had to like just minimize in some ways, right? So you're only getting a fraction of it, and that's also what's great about, and I'm really grateful for like this opportunity, because part of the reason why a lot of this work hasn't been shown is because it's multi-channel and it's really challenging. But to answer your question, my brother is like his editing, and it's a constant like. And it's also a learning process, because like I know he has giant headaches for me, like not waiting for him or like not aligning when we're shooting. But these, I have to remind myself, like I didn't go to film school. I didn't learn the traditional ways of doing these things. So like I had to teach we all like taught ourselves on the go as we worked on these projects. So it's been a learning curve, but fortunately, like he's really good at what he does. And but I would say in terms of the editing or sequencing, like I think my own like musical background, like I played music from K through 12 and even like in college for a few years. And I would say that my musical background definitely comes in handy in terms of sequencing and setting a tempo and editing. And so all of that comes back and definitely influences the way in which I'm not only shooting, but also like editing and piecing things together. Yeah.
And the whistling, and
Oh,
it comes in very rhythmically and weaves in really nicely when it's black and you just hear the birds or the whistling music also.
Mm-hmm.
I have a quick one. So navigating the archives within, a lot of that footage in the credits, you cite all of it. It's all there, and it's a lot from the 40s, 50s, 60s. And then you cite also books, like research. And a lot of those are from the late 90s, 2000s, early 2010s. And I'm like struck by like, oh, this is like the first critical mass of Latinx scholars that are actually writing about that era. And it's not until the late 90s, 2000s, early 2010s that they're able to publish in a more wide way, and they're able to get out through books. A lot of those things they saw when they were younger in the 80s, 70s, and 60s, which was all that stuff that you showed, right? And they must have been so little watching that and then thinking about like how misrepresented they are, right? And later they grow up and they become scholars and they write these books, and these books are now more widely available, shaping a new generation of artists and filmmakers. And so I was just noticing that in your credits, you kind of have this timeline that tells a story between those different sources. Anything you want to say just about research and how that plays a part in your work? Yeah,
that's great that you noticed that. And it was when it was scrolling, I was like, oh my God, people are gonna like leave me. But I also at the same time, like I felt it's really important to honor those that came before us, and because those are the backs, or their shoulders. I'm standing on their shoulders, so I really like need to credit them and for all their work. But also, like, it's interesting timeline-wise, like, because it takes such a long time to, like, digest, right, and process all that. And what does it mean? How have I internalized this? Like, how it has affected me? What am I going to do with this? What can I do with it that's going to be positive and fruitful? And so it's a long process. It's not immediate, and so I think it's important. Like, I think that's why it's also like slow, because it kind of forces you to like look at all of these different sources that have gone for decades. So that's part of it, and the other part is actually like of screening. One of the PST screenings. I really liked something that Carolina Caicedo said about the film could be a way I'm like, I can't verbatim quote her, but something along the lines of like the film becomes a way to kind of like cite your sources, or a bibliography of sorts, right? And I think it's also another way to kind of pass on and transmit knowledge. And because I'm not a writer, like this is my like academic contribution, right? This is in the way that I'm actually able to like produce, right? Even though like I do still write and it's not necessarily academic, but it does serve a purpose. Like it is still like useful in this other way that is visual, that is sonic, that is experiential. And I'm interested in those particular ways, but at the same time, obviously, I want to honor and credit everyone that's helped me get to that, that level of digestion and synthesizing.
Yeah, that's great. Questions for Francis? We're towards the end here. Another question. Oh.
I'm just curious if you'd speak on the slowness that I saw, especially in the early films, these kind of really long, beautiful takes where we're just kind of watching somebody make tortillas, right? It like normally you'd see like 4 seconds of that and then they cut to another, right? So I'm interested in that speed. And maybe now that we talked about the titles, like, because I felt myself when I was watching the titles, at first I was like, oh my God, is he really gonna do this? And then I was like, oh no, this is really beautiful. Like this is like the rest of the films, right? This is like watching the tortilla people make tortillas. And I just wonder if you could speak to that, and you mentioned something about the metaphysical a little bit earlier, or in one of the films, and I'm wondering if there's a metaphysical aspect of that, or just maybe the idea of slowness.
Yeah, thank you for pointing it out. And I think with the slowness, like I'm definitely interested in that, and I always try to, push it as much as I can, just to see how much I can get away with it, but also I have to be careful because I don't want to lose my audience with like so much slowness. But there's something so beautiful and just, what's a good word to, it's like sunbathing, right? Like it's just, you just absorbing this moment and lingering with it. And I feel like often we live in such a fast-paced world, and it's necessary, and I always have to remind myself how necessary it is to slow down. And maybe this is like partly, painting classes and slowing down and thinking about slowness. But I think it's definitely in film, I'm attracted to a lot of work that is slow in that way. I'm thinking Chantal Ackerman, Ross McElwee, and but also music. I think that there's a slowness, there's like, to the point where it's like vibrational. Like I'm glad like that last piece worked out, and like I was sitting in my seat, and this is the first time I see it on the big screen, but like I can feel the vibrations, and there's something so beautiful about that that for me it's like, because oftentimes like film is about like just reclining and watch, but that's something that like makes you feel, and I'm interested in like work that you're not just seeing or listening to, but you're actually like feeling, if that makes sense. Yeah, and that's also like why I'm grateful like for it to have it at this this scale. Like the mountain, the first piece, like I've always wanted to see that, like just because it's so funny. I hope you think it's funny that this massive mountain, and then like you just see my foot just kind of stepping on it. There's something comical about that, like this release that comes from that, and seeing at that scale, like really, like just makes it possible, I think, to fully experience that work. And this is the first time I've ever gotten it that big. Yeah.
It's almost like sobering. The illusion of cinema is broken and at the same time preserved. Like it's not a mountain, but it looked like one. And you call it mountain, right? So it was beautiful. And actually, off of this comment, the other day I was at this Chicano Media Arts conference in Pierce College, which actually Nora invited me to, and it came up there too. But it was from Cal State San Bernardino last week. I was showing a film in class, and students brought it up. They said, "Hey," and I had never thought about it that exact way. They brought up something really interesting. It was like they said, "Hey, our food is discriminated against. Why don't we ever see our food? Like we don't see them very much. We don't see Mexican food, Central American food. Like this was a student that's Salvadoran American, and he just started articulating, and then he just kept going, and everyone was like really interested in what he was saying, because like the more he talked about it, the more everyone was like, yeah, like there's these cooking shows, or even if it's just a movie or a TV show, and they're eating pizza and it's, or a hamburger, and it's like, why not a pupusa? Why not a burrito? I mean, maybe there's tacos a little bit, but it's, and then if they do show it, it's quick. It's not like the process, right? And I had never seen so in such a great way, like the student pointed out, representation of food as so mirroring representation of people in media. And I thought that was so wonderful. It reminded me of like an independent film. Jim Jarmusch was really interested in showing everything that usually in the industry is cut. Like you show people getting into a taxi and out of a taxi. You don't show the taxi ride, or you show people getting into an elevator or out of an elevator, but you don't actually show the elevator ride, or the, like in New York, the person working the elevator or the person working the taxi. And so in independent cinema in the US, there's some of these filmmakers were interested to show the people working, to show that what they don't show in a mainstream media film. And I thought this was an extension of that, but with food. And I thought it was wonderful. But yeah, anything, just off of that last comment, anything else you want to say about food and culture in media?
Yeah, food is nourishment, and we need it, and we often forget or don't value or don't recognize where it comes from, how it's made, and definitely there's ties to that. And I think also like thinking about or just remembering my own grandmother's stories and her like history of working as a farm worker in Central California, Central Valley. So coming from a long line of agricultural workers on both sides of my family, so there's definitely this connection to food, for sure. Like you cannot, I cannot separate, and I'm a foodie too, like I love eating, like, so there's this deep connection to food in the different stages, right? So that's one thing, and then I think in terms of process, I felt it was really important to show the process, not necessarily the end product, at least in Rhythm and Pleasure, just because I didn't want the end product to kind of like overpower or like take over. I was more interested in the process and like those actions and the movement, the gestures, the musicality of it, the way that trying to form a connection between body movement and camera and sound. Choreography, right? Like the way that we move our bodies, like oftentimes it's choreographed, we don't even think about it, but the way we move, there's a lot of choreography, the way we walk, the way we get up, what we do in the morning when we wake up, like all of that is choreographed. So what is our relationship? And it's patterns, right? Like it's patterns, and again, coming back to patterns, right? Patterns visually, sonically, movement-wise, like these are all, parts of our lives that is rudimentary, right? And I think often overlooked, just overlooked. And I think, again, in thinking about our relationship to the earth, we can start like breaking that apart and understanding why we follow certain certain movements, certain practices, certain traditions. And I think it has a lot to do with what's been passed down to us, right? And like what's been passed down to us, like what was their relationship to the earth, right? Like there's this, again, connection, and has to do a lot with cycles, right? And understanding, agriculture is based on cycles, based on the seasons. So again, these patterns, these rhythms that we've inherited and we continue to pass on. And we may not practice agriculture per se, but we are practicing these other rhythms. And I think there's something in that. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but but rhythm keeps reoccurring in everything that I do, and I think for all those reasons, I keep coming back to rhythm, yeah, and improvisation.
Mm-hmm. Should we do one more? How are you all doing? Any other question for Francis? Last question for Francis?
Or Anthony.
Or Anthony? Okay. Should we call it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's Sunday. Let's go talk. I know people are gonna want to talk one-on-one, so maybe we can, come find me. I would love to talk or connect, whatever. So
thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Francis.
Thank you all so much for coming.